Welcome to Far East Wargaming. My name is Richard, and I'm bringing you today another Heresy Thursday. Alongside me, once again, I've got Jason with me.
Hello, everyone.
And, well, this was an unexpected Heresy Thursday for us, because originally we were going to do some in-depth reviews on the Iron Hands, but GW surprised us on a Tuesday with what I thought they should do on a Thursday.
Yeah, right. I mean, fooled us. Last week they told us that was going to be the last Heresy Thursday for a while, and we said they should go out with a bang. And then, lo and behold, they dropped Heresy Tuesday with a bang on us.
Yeah, so what did they drop with us today? They dropped the the Militia Imperialis, or the Imperialis Militia.
The Imperialis Militia. So everybody, one of the things that we were waiting for, a kind of a niche favorite from 1.0. They've finally graced us with the rules from 2.0, and boy, are they pretty cool.
Yeah, it was super exciting to see. Super surprised, but just the potential. The potential here is huge.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I'm excited because we have a new army that's not Marines, and even though I play multiple legions and I love the Marines, of course, uh, I've always wanted to do a militia list or a solar aux list, and we've got it. And there's so much potential in this, whether it's from the modeling or just the different units, or you can do so much with this, and it's I think very welcome and a really nice move by GW.
Yeah, I think that opening up militia, because they did already open up some of the Imperials. They opened up Solar Auxilia, which was there. But then again, that was still, you're forced to be very resin still here. And here it's opening up so much conversion potential. And they even list it in the text that they're giving us here.
Yeah, literally every single box set for humans in Necromunda, in 40K, even some of the Age of Sigmar or Fantasy Battle stuff. Every single model you can think of in the range is literally fodder for this list, conversion fodder for this list. And you can do so many cool things. Whether you want to go futuristic, you want to go feral, you want to go feudal, you want to, go, of course, chaos or warp tainted. I mean, literally any human model in the entire range is now a fair game for this army.
Yeah. So, well, let's not talk too much more about our hype, and let's just actually dig into what they've shown us here.
Yeah, absolutely. And boy, it is a lot to dig into. So we'll start from the top.
Yeah. I think it's best to work down this. Basically, they've released a black book in free format. They should do this more.
Yeah, right. I printed it out today, and it took the printer quite a while to do that. And I plan on actually having it bound because it's like 41 pages. It definitely deserves to be bound, and we'll probably be looking at it a lot. So makes sense.
Yeah, no. I'll say this, if I had the patience to paint everything that this army needs, I would definitely add it to me, but to my own repertoire. But I think Horde armies, or this could potentially be both a Horde army or a Specialist army, but I think looking at it, Horde army is the way I'd want to go. And I don't have the time.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot of painting. It's going to take a lot of assembly. I will probably do it, and I will probably start it out as an allied detachment, which has a ton of potential. Yeah, I already have some of the models. I mean, I've been hoarding the Deathcore Krieg. I've been hoarding some of the Imperial Navy breachers from the boarding action set. I mean, yeah, I've got a lot of different models that I can throw at this, but you're absolutely right. You better be prepared to assemble and paint quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, should we start with the Imperialis Militia Army list itself, like the subtypes that they've got? Because they are different, and this is where the key differences from the Space Marines come in, right?
Yeah, it's three new subtypes. So these are the militia subtype, the third line subtype, and the mechanized unit subtype. And basically, the militia subtype is mostly referring to the infantry, and in essence, it stops you from building the fearless, rock hard militia lists that we saw in 1.0. You can be swept much easier. You can fall back much easier, etc. So that's what militia subtype refers to, but it also refers to the provinences, which we will talk about in a bit. They trigger on a lot of units that have this militia rule. The third line unit subtype is really referring to your vehicles and your tanks. So you can take a lot of vehicles and tanks in this list, including some cool options that we'll talk about in a minute. But they are more substandard, right? They're not as rock hard as like a regular Lehman Russ would be, for example. They can be penetrated on all glancing hits. So yes, it doesn't make them quite as durable, but I mean, I think they had to do that also for a little bit of balance, and I think for flavor. And then finally, this mechanized unit subtype is kind of how the rules refer to things like sentinels. So they kind of look like a mix of a bit of a monstrous creature and a dreadnought in terms of the rules that are available in that subtype. But yeah, all three of these are absolutely brand new.
Yeah, so that's the one thing. I was looking at the militia subtype for the unit subtype there, just for the normal guys. Not being able to regroup if you fall back under half strength. That's you are starting. The majority, I think, of the troop choices are very large, swarmy things, 20 man units. So losing 10 is, well, it's half. It's a lot of losses in itself. But it really just play into the fact that these are humans and not gene specialized warriors like the Space Marines. So there's a fear mindset here.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, to be honest, I think it needed to be done because if you saw some of the militia lists that you could actually create in 1.0, you could make an entire army that basically was fearless, couldn't be broken. And that's not, I mean, even the legions themselves couldn't do that. So to me, that was a little bit over the top. So I can totally see them addressing that through this subtype. It does encourage you to take the larger units. Yes, some of the unit sizes are at 20 that we'll talk about in a minute, but I think there's even some choices that can go up to like 30 or 50 or something ridiculous like this. But yeah, that particular subtype rule is going to encourage you to take the larger infantry blocks.
Yeah, we can get into that in a bit as well, because I think I saw just a preview. For each troop allocation, you can take 3 squads, so that's 60 models per troop selection. I think that was, if I'm not mistaken. That's that there is I think also needed, considering the cost of these things. They're very cheap. But it's just a lot of potential, I don't know, cannon fodder on the table. It would be impressive to see a full Horde army of like militia. That would be something on the board.
Oh, that opens up a totally new playstyle, right? If you think about it, you could very easily field an army that controls the board with this list, which is something you normally only see as a playstyle like in 40K, right? Or a bit in the Age of Sigmar. You can now do this in Heresy, making it much harder for people to deep strike or making it much harder for people to get objectives. You could absolutely do that with this list if you were so inclined. I'm not crazy enough to try and paint up like 300 or 400 militiamen to do that style, but you can definitely control the board, or you can definitely protect some of your assets by all those extra bodies.
Yeah, it's definitely true. Well, they've also got some quite interesting warlord traits, very different from what we have with the Space Marines here, and I think there's so much potential in all of them, and because they're so vastly different, I just love the options that you can have here.
Oh yeah, you got 6 choices, right?
Yeah.
I mean, six warlord traits. Some are obviously leaning more towards flavorful, which is great, which is welcome. I mean, so everything doesn't have to be, totally rules and points efficient to be good. I mean, there's some flavorful options in here. If we take things like beloved of the people, that doesn't even trigger until your warlord dies, which is so cool, right? But if he does die, then all of a sudden, parts of your army fight harder in his name, which is such a flavorful rule. I love that. Or ruthless tyrant, right? People are afraid of him, and he can stop them from running or do things like that. Or, even the more weird one, which is this connoisseur of alien curios. He has a chance to seriously hurt himself, or he has a chance to do some really cool stuff because he's been messing around with Xenos tech. So none of these are OP. All of them are useful. And all of them, in my mind, are flavorful, which is not something that we've necessarily seen with the legions themselves, where they're writing rules with that in mind.
Yeah. It's very, I think flavorful is the right word. That connoisseur of alien curios. I love that randomness of, on a 1, you're basically dead. On a 6, you become an eternal warrior with a feel no pain 4+. So you become, for this army, quasi unkillable, and you can keep rolling this every turn. So your warlord with luck could be extremely OP.
Yeah. I mean, fishing for 6 is never necessarily a good thing, but yeah, from a flavor perspective, it's awesome, right? He's been messing around with the Xenos tech, and all of a sudden he's turned himself into a bit of a Superman. That's really cool. I think actually the one that's probably, if you're talking purely from an effectiveness perspective, I think the one that probably stands out in this lot is Robert Baron, right? Getting strength bonuses to he and his unit on the duration in which they charge. You can't make a sweeping advance, but if you get in a situation where you can actually trigger a sweeping advance, instead you have an opportunity on a 4+ to roll extra victory points. So think about that for a second. I mean, if you somehow manage to create a little hand-to-hand unit that's semi-effective, and you can roll some, perhaps bully some smaller enemy units and try to sweep them, I mean, that unlocks extra victory points. So that's a pretty cool one. That's not necessarily OP, because there is still a bit of randomness to it. And let's face it, the militia are not, hand-to-hand monsters. But yeah, I think that's the one that sticks out in my mind if you're really trying to build a quote-unquote effective militia list or overly effective list.
Well, with how hard victory points, or how few victory points are up for grabs in most games, D3, hell, 3 victory points, that's sometimes more than the margin that we normally play at in terms of the total number of victory points we get in a game. So being able to do that with specialized unit, you put those in a nice unit of elites or something along those lines, and you could quite easily win it just doing that 1 or 2 times.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I mean, I think there's some combos that we'll talk about in a little bit, that you can make a semi-decent hand-to-hand militia unit with the Warlord. And yeah, who knows, maybe you could trigger this.
Well, the fun stuff really comes in when you have a Warlord, because you need the Force Commander to be able to get all these providences, right? So he himself, not super impressive, he's human, right? So weapon skill 4, ballistic skill 4, strength and toughness 3, 3 wounds, which is nice, a 5+ armor save, and then I think he has a refractor field, which is another 5+ invul. So not who I would necessarily throw in against a Space Marine dedicated combat person to try and survive, but keeping him in the background just to get the provinces, this is where the fun begins for this, and this is where you can build your army around.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's a must-have. I mean, the prominences are free, and you can take up to 2 of them, and we'll talk about it in a moment. But I think that's in some ways reflected in his points, because you're right. He's just a normal human, but he costs 100 points stock. Now, if you wanted to, and again, through the Prominence or through the Warlord traits, if you wanted to try and turn him and buff him up a little bit, you can. You can replace the refractor field with an Iron Halo. You can give him a Cyber Familiar, so you could actually get him to that sweet 3++ invuln if you wanted to. You can get him with a Power Fist. I mean, yeah, you can do some things with him, and if you take the Prominence in a moment that buffs up strength, for example, he gets strength 4, then you got a Power Fist. He's a Marine killer. He's instant killing, right? And then if he had the Cyber Familiar and the Iron Halo, if you wanted to drop the points on it, it's harder for him to be killed in return. So yeah, you can spend the points on him, but I kind of agree with you that his value is really in unlocking the provinces and not so much as what he can do himself.
Yeah. Well, then let's dig into the prominences. These, I don't even know how many. There's so many that you can choose from here, and there's flavor, there's utility, there's some are relatively useless, but it's just the options, the total options there.
Oh yeah, so cool. I don't know how many there are. I think there might be like 11 or something like this. But yeah, just a reminder that you can only unlock them through that Force Commander. You do get to choose 2 of them. In most cases, unless their rules say differently, they only affect units with the Militia Subtype. So in theory, most of your infantry, right? But yeah, there's some cool ones here. I don't think that actually any of them are useless, right? Again, if you're building for theme, or if you're building for flavor, or you're trying to do some wacky list, I mean, you can do jump packing beastmen with these things.
I saw that.
You can do an all Ogren army. You can do actually an elite compact army where Grenadiers, which are the smaller units which have more weapon options. they become your troop choices. You can do lists where you can take lots of Volkite, or I mean, there's just so many different things here. Whether you're going for flavor or you're going for the rules themselves, I actually don't think any stick out to me as useless. Some are definitely better than others. Um, let's take some of my favorites. Legacy of the Great Crusade.
Yeah.
So this turns your grenadiers, your militia command cadres, your discipline masters. It increases ballistic skill by 1. So basically, it's telling you want to take those grenadiers or those more elite units. Your force commander all of a sudden becomes initiative 5. Okay, that's good. That means he can bully some of the lower level Legion HQs if you really wanted him to. Yeah, very useful one. And if you were to combine that with another one, let's say, I don't know, let's combine it with Armory of the Old Knight. That allows you to replace las guns with las rifles, and it allows you to upgrade to things like Volkite Serpentas, Volkite Culverins. So now all of a sudden you've got a little more elite type militia list that has access to some of the more stronger infantry weapons. And there you go. There you've got your theme. Maybe it's your Rit Forge World Defense Force that has access to all the cool toys and not necessarily all the bodies. Yeah, so I think those are two that really stick out as a nice little combo. Very interesting.
Omri of the Old Knight is the one that sticks out to me when I was reading it the most, because having the las guns, the las guns instead of the I think the las carbines they come with, or the normal lases. These are heavy 2 or heavy 1 shots. You have so many infantry. It's just waves of dice, and we found that, I think we found that in our games, it's just having to make saves, no matter if you're on a 2+ save or a 3+ save or a 5+ interval. Just the fact you have to make so many saves, you lose models. It's inevitable. And if you're talking about this wave of shots coming from infantry, 20 per infantry, 40 per infantry unit, and you have 7 or 8 of these infantry units, that's just a massive dice. That even though the ballistic skills are potentially lower, so their ballistic skills 3, which is hitting on 4s, I believe. There is the provenance to make the ballistic skill better, so they can become better shooters, and strength 3, so wounding a normal marine on 5. It's just still gonna have a lot of saves.
Yeah, absolutely. Dice, I mean, if you can make people roll, even Terminators, right? What's the best way to kill Terminators besides very heavy weapons? It's either double, instant kill them, or it's make them roll a lot of dice and fish for those ones. So yeah, you're right. I mean, I think it's deceptively can be powerful depending on some of these little combinations. Another one that sticks out to me is very cool from both a flavor and effectiveness perspective is the Ogren conscripts. Right, because this now all of a sudden allows you to take those Ogren squads as troop choices. They gain line. They also allow you to attach to them discipline masters, medicaes, or force commanders, which normally you couldn't because they have the monstrous subtype. You normally couldn't stick those kinds of characters with them. So now all of a sudden, there you go. Your tooled out force commander, ready for hand-to-hand, trying to get those extra victory points, is now able to attach himself to some conscripts. And you could even combine that with something like Feral Warriors, where they get +1 to their weapon skill. If they make a successful charge, you could combine that with Kinfolk Helots or Helots. You could get another +1 toughness, or the other one that does a +1 strength. So yeah, that's a cool one to me as well. I think that Ogren one also sticks out as ripe for some cool combos. And I mean, let's face it, an entire army of Ogrens. Who wouldn't love to see that?
Yeah, it's, to me, regardless of how well they play, it's this versatility. We're so used to just seeing Marines. And yes, Marines in different shades of colours for the different legions, and maybe some specialist units. But this is just going to be, every army can be completely different. You could be using so much of the GW human range across their ranges, in terms of, it doesn't have to just be 40k. Like, you can use some of the Age of Sigmar, the Necromunda. We were just talking about this, the Necromunda, things like this. Kill Team. It's just the forces on the table will add so much flavor, and that's part of what I love.
Yeah, absolutely. And we even forgot about Leagues of OTAN, so the squats that are not squats. If you if you want to make a militia list using those models, you can do that, and you even have the provenance here, the same one, the kinfolk helots. You can use that to to represent, a squat militia force, which is pretty cool. Um, and we were talking earlier about the power or the interesting part of the list, and it kind of pushing you towards hordes. Well, there's a provenance if you don't want to do that. Industrial stronghold. Now all of a sudden you can flood the table with Lehman Russes. Yes, they have that third line um, subtype that makes them less effective than a normal Lehman Russ, but they're cheap. And if you're putting things like template weapons on them, the ballistic skill 3 doesn't necessarily matter. And that's how all of a sudden you get to a more compact list, combined with the one that takes the Grenadiers, makes you choose more Grenadiers. You've got your elite mechanized force if you want to do that.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of something that's very, for the Astra Militarum at the moment in 40k, tank heavy lists are quite popular, and this is an easy way for those players to jump straight into Age of Darkness, Horus Heresy 2.0. They can just literally take what they've got and play them straight away. And I think that's also kind of what GW is aiming at in terms of because we are now, the Horus Heresy is now one of their main games. So being able, the adaptability, and we've seen it across the board just in general, this year, is making all of the Astra Militarum backwards compatible.
Yes, for sure. And you can actually get into this list for relatively cheap, right? If most of that Astra Militarum stuff is going to be useful in the militia list, you can buy the boarding party box set, or you can perhaps find somebody that's still got a bunch of old Cadians they want to get rid of for cheap. Plastics are definitely your friend here, but you could even go into the resin range with Forge World if you wanted to, especially for some of the Necromunda upgrades and options and things like this.
One thing before we move on from these providences, the one thing I'd like to point out is this, because we're talking about horde armies, endless horde. So the unending horde, the fact that on a 4+, the unit you've just lost comes back into reserves. I think that's just it's a scary thought for some of the missions we've played, having just the units we thought we got rid of. And granted, it's only for the core troops. I think it only applies to levies and infantry militia, militia infantry squads. But still, if that's the horde army you're playing, because those are the ones with the heavy, the las guns, the las rifles, things like this, you can't just the survivability of this army just goes through the roof.
Yeah, and I think they balanced it out a little bit by saying that those units that are destroyed, they still score victory points as normal for your opponent, so that does balance out a bit. But yeah, this is so cool. I mean, for your Chaos Horde, your Chaos Cultist Horde, or Beastman Horde, or Abhuman Horde type of army, I mean, this is a really cool one because you're just going to be throwing those guys ahead, trying to get them destroyed because you're roughly 50% of the time going to come back. Or even if you wanted to do a themed penal legion, convicts, we're lining them up, we're throwing them to their deaths because there's more.
Yeah.
Very cool. Combine that with a couple of the other provinces as well, and you've got your themed list. That's also pretty cool to see when the units come back.
No, the possibilities just keep coming to me in terms of how you can combine these and how cool they would be. And every time I think of a new one, it pushes me towards wanting to add to my pile of shame. but I'm trying very hard to refrain from doing this, or from jumping down another rabbit hole.
Right? I mean, but that's also like that's a sign of some cool rules. If people are this excited and it's got your brain working all these different ways, I mean, I think that's a good sign that GW did something very cool and did something very interesting. Because let's face it, some of the other units that they've released through the PDF process, I mean, some of them have been quite meh. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great sign that it's got people talking, it's got people thinking about what are the cool things that they can actually do with it. And really, that's what Heresy is, right? People taking a lot of pride in it and doing different stuff and having a theme and this kind of thing, and not just about the rules effectiveness.
Yeah, after the last few announcements being what I can only say is underwhelming, this is a breath of fresh air, of sunlight, of there is hope for our favorite game system.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, well, so moving on from the provinces, because we could honestly spend another hour plus talking about these and the combinations there. But if we did, this would be a 2-hour chat, and we're already about 25 minutes into this. But so, well, let's look at the other HQs. You've got the Discipline Masters, and these are basically upgraded sergeants, right?
Yeah, these are your guys that get you kind of closer to the fearless. I mean, they don't grant fearless to the units. They basically allow you to do a reroll if you fail a morale check. So yeah, if you want to invest the points and perhaps keeping some of your units like your Grenadiers or something like that from running, these will help. You can trick them out a little bit if you want to, but I'm a big believer in boys before toys. So I think you guys keep these guys cheap and cheerful, and you take several of them for a couple of the units that you want to kind of stick around, maybe hold an objective or whatever.
Yeah.
But again, don't forget with that those one provinence where you can attach these all of a sudden to Ogrens. Those become something that's really a lot harder to move.
Yeah, definitely. Again, the uses. It's nice you can take 12 of them in one HQ selection, because we do have a limited number of HQ selections. But again, there's a limited number of HQs in this force. The next one that's really interesting is the Imperialis Militia Rogue Psyker. That one there opens another world of possibilities for what you can do with this force.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can either field him by himself, or you can even take some wardens with him. So I guess these are the guys that are trying to push him in the right direction to make him hopefully do something before he blows his head off. But yeah, that's an interesting choice. It comes with its own little psychic discipline, which is actually quite similar, I think, to the ones that are available to the legions. But yeah, another interesting choice, and definitely one that fits into the chaos themed lists, the cult horde type lists.
Well, yeah, it's a trader only one, and it's got the ability to bring demons with you. You can bring demons with this list. You have the Breach the Veil, where he summons demons. It's adding more and more options, and it's just, oh god, I can't express enough how I like what I'm seeing here. But yeah.
Yes, definitely bringing the demons. Very cool. I mean, this little Void Dart psychic weapon ability that he has is not to be underestimated. It's an Assault 12 power. That's Strength 5. So basically, he's toting like a couple of heavy bolters in his head, and he can run around and shoot those too. So that's nice little bonus. The demons, yeah, he can do that too.
Yeah. And then, okay, we're rounding off, I think, the HQ is just the simple command squad, the command cadre. I think it's more or less the bodyguards for your force commander. A pretty standard thing, I think, there.
Yeah, definitely. These are the guys that you want guarding your force commander if you're not going to, do some other tricks and stick them with another unit. The unit itself can go all the way up to 20. You can give them, of course, all kinds of upgrades, standards, and NCO Vox. It's kind of strange in my mind that only one can do things like add the special weapons like flamers, melta guns, plasma guns, heavy stubber, etc. I would have thought that maybe they wanted to do like maybe one every 10 models or one every 5 models. That part's a little bit strange to me. But yeah, this is the retinue for your force commander. And a running theme in this list as well. I think certain units you're going to want to pay the extra points to get things like the Carapace armor to bump that save up to a 4+.
Well, yeah, it's a 20 points for the entire squad. So it doesn't matter if you have just the bare minimum or the full set. It's 20 points. And so the more you add, the more value this is.
Yeah, absolutely. And you definitely want to do that. I mean, throughout this list, you don't want all of your guys. You want to spare some points on that Carapace armor, because there's just too many Legion weapons or Mechanicum weapons that will spread through a 5+ save, because they'll have AP5, for example. Pay the points to make your army a little bit more durable, and it's not that expensive, especially as you mentioned at the larger unit sizes.
Yeah. Then moving on to the troops, we've got the standard Militia Infantry Squad. These are the bog standard 20-man guys.
So, yep, these are your basic troops.
Yeah, weapon skill, like everything's less than a Marine. Weapon skill 3, ballistic skill 3, strength 3, toughness 3, 1 wound, initiative 3, leadership very low, 6 and 5. Just the cannon fodder guys. Well, the upgraded cannon fodder. I think Levees themselves are the cannon fodder for that. But they can.
Yeah.
These are the guys with just that come with the las gun and with some of the providences. They can be upgraded straight to the more powerful versions.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to keep them cheap and cheerful, like a lot of the other units. You don't want to dump a lot of points into this. They can get get a bump up from the Providence or from things like this. They do have a very unique rule that a couple units have, which is this strength in numbers, which means that you can actually take a unit of 3, kind of like a Solar Ox Tercio. 3 of them count as only a single troop choice, if you want to do that as well. And then once they deploy, they can separate, unlike a Solar Ox Tercio. But yeah, these guys are super cheap. I mean, 20 of them is only 80 points. You can, if you wanted to, upgrade some of the weapons and things like that. But honestly, I don't really recommend it. Use these just to fill out your slots to either sit on objectives or to march forward and get killed, to kind of divert from the attention from some of your other things.
Yeah, well, you think about it, 80 points, everything's line, 20 guys. We've got some of the games, some of the scenarios you play are very objective driven. This is just very easy to sit multiple units on objectives for very cheap, and this is one of the things to think in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing you're definitely going to have to do in this list is you're going to have to pay attention to things like leadership, because I mean, as you pointed out, the leadership is definitely lower than a legion. Even with some of those other tricks like the discipline cadre or the warlord traits, etc., you just have to get used to the fact that a lot of your units are probably going to break. And to your point, if you're taking a block of 3 of these and you're putting them on an objective, well, that's 3 that have to be broken off of the objective before they lose it. And because they have line, unlike the levies, these are your scoring units.
Yeah, these are the scoring ones for most. Now, speaking of the levies, these are the disposable, I'd say even the penal guys, the fanatics, the cultists, whatever, however you want to model them. But these are the ones, especially if you're talking about the Endless Horde, the ones you willingly throw down the line to try and kill as much as you can. 40 points, 20 guys. I don't really know what else to say there.
Yeah, that's all there. I mean, their rules, their stats, everything is written as you want these guys to die. They're trash. But yeah, I mean, it's not that they're totally useless. They're definitely going to keep the opponent's attention. That's really what they're going to be there for, because they don't have line. They have the expendable rule where they don't give up victory points. They do have the strength in numbers where, again, you can take up to 3 of them as a single troops choice. But because they don't have very many options and they have basically shit across the board for stats and everything else, you just want them to die.
Yeah, that's I think that was really it here. Weapon skill 2, it's just you're throwing they can't be ignored per se, and they can quite easily hold your opponent's units up, even though they'll break straight away after engaging in combat. That's still a blocking unit that's getting in the way of Terminators, getting in the way of just other line scoring squads.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if I was running these guys, I can think of 3 examples. Example 1, I'm going to use them to do board control to make it harder to deep strike. That's one way to do it. Option number 2, I've got a nasty contemptor that's coming at me. I'm just going to throw this at it to slow it down for the half turn that it's going to slow it down. Option 3, my opponent's got like perhaps a heavy support squad or something, and I'm just going to try and get these to it as fast as possible to try and stop it from maybe getting a round of shooting or something. But yeah, that's really where their value comes.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. The expendable part, there's no such thing as falling back. You just remove them. So I just find that quite funny.
Yep.
Okay, the Militia Grenadier Squad. These are a higher elite unit in a troop slot.
Yeah, it's a little weird. I mean, I know that they're calling it an elite unit. They have a better point of leadership versus a regular infantry squad, so that's great. They don't really have anything else from a stats perspective. They do come stock with the carapace armor, so they get that 4-up save. They do have some different weapon options. So in this squad, up to 2 of them can take things like multi-guns, plasma guns, grenade launchers. Interestingly, 2 of them could take a sniper rifle if you want. Now, ballistic skill 3, I don't think unless you're taking the right provenance, you necessarily want to do that. But if you wanted a unit to sit back and snipe, here you could have it cheaply do that. If you wanted to stick this unit into transports to go try and get around the table and go get some objectives, because they do have line, which is good, but they do also have that ability as well if you wanted to do it. So yeah, these are your kind of more elite version, but I mean, let's face it, they're not like they're not like veterans with all these different options that they can do and whatnot, but they do have more value.
Yeah, they've got their, I think I'd say the one thing I think you'll find is they're maybe slightly better in close combat just because they come with a close combat weapon standard, so they're getting that extra attack for 2 weapons. So the standard guy has 2 attacks versus the normal lineman, but again, they're 75 points for 10 of them instead of 80 points for 20, and they'll suffer really all the same downsides as having one of the normal militia line units there. Oh, better armor save, 4+.
Yeah, and the better leadership. Let's not discount that, because it is a big difference, I think, from 6 going to 7 from a statistics perspective. So that's probably welcome. But again, the provenance is where this is really going to shine, right? Because if all of a sudden you're giving them the better ballistic skill, or you're doing different things with them through those rules, then they really get a lot more value.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to a fire support squad. So these are different than what we have as the options for the Space Marines. These are emplacements, right?
Yeah, they have the emplacement rule. They still have the militia rule. So interestingly enough, so that they are affected by the provenance. They don't have any options to increase their armor, unfortunately. So they are going to fold like in a stiff breeze, like paper. But where they do have a lot of value is some of the weapons that they can take. A mortar, if you wanted to run mortar squads, which are useful for things like pinning. If you wanted to run some of the heavy weapons, honestly, I wouldn't recommend spending the points to turn these into last cannon squads. I mean, because think about it, unless you have the provenance to improve the ballistic skill, they're only going to hit half the time. They don't have the option to do better than a 5-up save. Any enemy with half a brain is going to probably shoot at these things first. If you've got you decided for some reason to take 6 las cannons, they're gonna die really, really quick. So I think their value again is more in things like the mortar, maybe a missile launcher, but yeah, I think it's a cheap way to get some of these weapons, but I don't recommend pouring a lot of points into it.
Yeah, with how squishy they are in terms of, yes, they're 2 wounds each, you could say, but still with their low leadership there, passing a leadership 6 test is relatively hard for that. And if they flee, they're out. The unit is just removed from falling back because they have to leave their weapons behind. So if you do sink too many points, the las cannon, it's 35 points per model, and it's 1 las cannon. It's not a twin linked, it's not a Gravis. It's just 1 las cannon shot for 35 points.
Yep, I think there's some better options if you're really trying to get the heavier weapons, I think, as we'll talk about for some of the other units. But I can still see a spot for these in the list, but don't count on them to last long.
Yeah, priority number 1 for a lot, especially if you upgrade them into the deadlier stuff.
Yep.
Reconnaissance squads. So these are the ones I think where the long las are more useful in putting these guys. So basically 5 scouts, more or less, with infiltrate, move through cover, and a long las or a sniper rifle is only 10 points more per model. So we're talking about 100 points for a 5-man squad, but these are your snipers. I think people will be prioritizing this 100 points versus a Grenadier with 2 snipers having to stick them at the back there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think they're probably a bit overcosted because, I mean, if we compare this to the Legion list, a Legion recon squad with 5 sniper rifles is not too much more than this. And you get such a better stat line. You get a Legionnaire and you get a Legion save with power armor blah, 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 blah. But I do think that they do have value as snipers. You're absolutely right. And if you stick them in cover, it does increase their durability, perhaps if it was in ruins to get that 5-up. But yeah, I think definitely sniper rifles are a good thing in this edition. And if you've got the Prominence that turns them into ballistic skill 4, even better.
Yeah. So I think if you're going for the shooty, you kind of have to choose the shooty providences. If you're going for close combat horde, you can choose the horde versions of things. But I've got a feeling a lot of people are going to be choosing that shooting providence where you get ballistic skill 4 for everything, just because you have so many guns, and it does increase the odds of hitting so much more.
Absolutely. I think that's probably going to be the go-to for many people for exactly that reason.
Okay, so we'll move quickly into the elites. So we've got the Medicae detachment. So these are the apothecaries for the militia here.
Yeah, they're apothecary light, right? Because their feel no pain is not a 5-up, it's only a 6. So that's a dramatic reduction in their effectiveness. But on the flip side, if you're sticking this with a unit of 20 or 30 or more, then they will get a better return. Or if you're sticking these with the Ogrens, the multi-wound models, or things like the cavalry. Now, I don't know if they can even go with cavalry. I don't think they can, actually.
They can. All models with infantry or cavalry can. Yeah, so they definitely can.
Okay, perfect. I think if you're going to get the most value out of these, if you're running big blobs, if you're running lots of Ogrens or multi-wound models, I can see them having a use. But again, a 6-up feel no pain is nothing to get excited about.
Yeah. Not as nice as the 5-up. It's again, we're fishing for 6s. It's kind of a hard one. And then we've got the Ogrens. The Ogrens, and these are the bad boys we're talking about here. These are the guys who are strength 5, toughness 5, 3 wounds each, weapon skill 4. So we're talking 3 Ogrens, 100 points. These are the ones that could potentially take out some Space Marines.
Absolutely. These are the ones that really have me excited because you can do a lot of different things with them. You can take the unit size up to 10 if you want a big blob. You can take the Prominence where you can stick a Discipline Master with them, which I highly recommend because they only have Leadership 6, Leadership 7 if you upgrade one with a boss. So if you stick a Discipline Master with them in that Prominence, then all of a sudden they can re-roll a failed morale check. They all have the ability to get a boarding shield for relatively cheap, which is a 5-up invuln. They can get Carapace armor, and it's only a flat 25, regardless of the unit size. So you can actually make a semi-tanky unit with these guys, and you can even give the Ogren boss a Thunderhammer, which is everybody's favorite weapon in 2.0.
Yeah, Brutal being the king in 2.0.
Absolutely. So you can make these guys where they can go and bully some Marine units. No, they're not going to go toe-to-toe with a unit of Fire Drakes.
I don't think anything is, to be honest.
Well, I mean, they could actually hold potentially the Fire Drakes up, right? Because, they're already Strength 5, Toughness 5. If you take the Prominence that makes them Strength 6, or you take the other one that makes them Strength 6, Toughness 6.
I don't think they can take the one, I think we'd have to double-check, but I think there was some restrictions with the Ogrens about one of the provinces. There's a conflict of interest in some of the provinces. But yes, it could potentially help them out there. I think they couldn't get their strength increased, if I'm not mistaken, from one of these provinces. I'd have to scroll back up and have a look. But yeah, they Hammer of Wrath, stubborn, means that they're always rolling on 7s. With that, if you put one of these elite commanders, the HQ slots in, you're making a very tanky, close combat killing unit.
Absolutely. Don't waste the points on anything that shoots because they only have ballistic skill 2, and even if you take the one that upgrades them, that's ballistic skill 3. So it's not worth it to me. I would rather have the shields than some of these other things. Or if you're not going to run the shields, then give them the extra. Give them some of these other upgrades, but don't waste your time on shooting. But yeah, with the right combination of other rules, these can be a pretty effective unit in my mind.
You can't discount Toughness 5. There's not many things in the game with Toughness 5, and that puts you out of instant death, especially for multi-wound models like this, 3 more. So a Thunderhammer isn't necessarily killing you outright, even though it is brutal too. You've got chances. With a boarding shield, the 5-up save from Invul, there you can survive against Thunderhammers.
Yep, exactly. And with that Discipline Master, like we said, I mean, a Stubborn with a reroll will make them pretty hard to shift. So there's definitely a place for a squad or 2 of these or more in every single militia list in my mind, for sure. Uh, Primus, the Medicae that we just talked about. I mean, if you're running a unit of 10 of these with a Force Commander, Discipline Master, you might as well throw the Medicae in there because they're multi-wound models and try and get that 6-up feel no pain as well, which because of the high toughness, they'll be taking most of the time.
Yeah. I like them. I'm very excited to see some of these on the table. I think they're just a very cool model themselves. So moving on, we got the field gun battery. So this is an upgraded version of the field emplacement one.
Yep, it's upgraded. It has a better leadership. It has access to heavier weapons like the heavy las cannon. I still think that, again, I mean, because you can't upgrade the save higher than a 5, you do have 3 wounds, so you have an extra wound. But you're still, well, you're T4. That's an upgrade, so it is a little bit harder to instant kill you. I think they're
still expensive.
Okay. Yep, I think they're okay. I think they're viable. I just don't think that they're your primary source of heavy weapons. I mean, we'll talk about what I think is going to be your primary heavy weapon source in just a moment. But yeah, these, if you really want to get things like a heavy las cannon, I guess these are okay. But again, you just need to be prepared for the fact that they're squishy.
Yep. Not I was going to say cheap and cheerful, but definitely not cheap.
No, I mean, it's 65 points a stand if you put a heavy las cannon on it.
Yeah. We're moving now swiftly into the fast attacks. So we've got the Arvis Transport. What is an Arvis Transport?
It's that Forge World model, which is a cool model. It looks like a little minivan with wings. Yeah, I mean, it's a transport, great, but it's a flyer, which flyers are quite weak in this edition. It doesn't have heavy armor. It doesn't have any weapons. It only has a transport capacity of 12.
2 hull
honestly,
points.
I think this is almost worthless. I mean, if you have the model, great. If you want to use it, great. I just don't think it's a very good choice the way it's written. Yeah, I mean, pass. If you're really going to need a transport, there's definitely better options.
Yeah, I think so too. It's nice because the model's there and they've given it some rules. With armor 11 on the front and sides, 2 hull points. This, if you put anything of value in it, so is getting shot off with interceptor straight away.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, then we've got this is a new one, the Cargo 8 Horus Squadron. So I think we had a quick chat about this off stream. It's the new one they've just released, right?
Yeah, it's a Necromunda model. So it's the one they released. It looks like a little 6-wheeled or 8-wheeled truck with a flatbed, or you can stick a munition container on the back. This is a really cool unit to include in this list. I mean, kudos to GW to find a use for that model outside of just Necromunda. It's got a ton of transport capacity. It can go all the way up to 22. It has front armor 12, which is okay, but it is still suffering, of course, from the 3rd line subtype, which makes it a little bit more vulnerable. It can take some extra weapons. It can take an armored container, but that reduces the transport by 12. It's not crazy expensive. So, yeah, I mean, cool. I think it's usable. I don't think it's, fantastic. I don't think it's one of the greatest things in the list, but definitely kudos to GW for giving us the option at least, and people can use this in this list.
I think it's a cheap and cheerful transport, but it's got a lot of versatility. Front armor 12 is good. I think it's better than a Rhino, right? I think Rhino is 11 except for the rear, and so yes, it's but for the pens themselves, it's because of the 3rd line. I think this is what you'll see most people using as their transport if they needed the transport here in the fast attack slots, and you can have a total of three in a slot. I like it. I think the model's cool too. I'm glad it's on, but it doesn't go very far. 10 inches.
Yep, definitely got a shorter distance that it can travel, but it does have the high transport capacity. It's not expensive points wise. Yeah, why not? Yeah. But if you're going to run this, you're going to definitely need to run multiples, because you just have to accept the fact that they're going to die really quickly. So don't rely on just one to get your Death Star. If you can actually create a Death Star, don't rely on just one. It's just going to die. You need to go multiples or don't get it at all.
Yeah, I see this more throw in all your levies into one, and like a group of 3, charging up the table to try and get these things to hold people off.
Yeah,
Then,
absolutely.
yeah, we've got the military cavalry squad. Again, this is what I find as a cool. I love these models. I love cavalry. That's the one thing I think has been missing. I myself, for my Dark Angels, are doing some lore appropriate conversions for a type of cavalry squad instead of bikes. I'm so glad they're here.
Yes, I mean, this is such a cool choice, such a flavorful choice. And let's not forget that it doesn't have to be guys on horses. And yes, we have the new Rough Rider models, which I think are brilliant, and you could use them for this choice. But you could use the Gene Stealer cult guys on bikes. You could figure out a crazy way to convert some Lizardmen mounts into a feral army and stick some guys on the back of those. I mean, the sky is really the limit with this from a modeling or from a hobby perspective. And from a rules perspective, they're actually not too bad. They move quite fast. They have Scout. They have Relentless. They can get Carapace armor. And they do have the ability to take some interesting weapons. So they can take the lance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they have a lance, a militia lance they can take, or they can take a melta lance. So on the charge, they're actually going to have a bit of punch. Probably not going to stay for very long. But like a melta lance is a strength 8 AP3 attack with sudden strike 2 with the lance rule. So these guys could potentially go and pop something like a Land Raider or something like that. You could definitely send these guys after it. And again, if you run multiple units because you want to saturate your threats, if you run multiple units, chances are one of them is going to get through and go after that transport or that heavy armor that you really want gone. So yeah, I like this. I like this unit.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the points. 50 points for 5, that's 10 points a model. 8 points for additional ones. These are dirt cheap fast units. You run a few of these, like two of these here. It's definitely a round of shooting that they can't be ignored for, that lets other things move up the table, even if these get lost. And if they get lost, it's not a lot of points.
No, not at all. Yeah, I mean, if I was going to run this, and I'm not using the Providence that lets me run a lot of them, but if strictly for fast attack, I would probably take 3 of these, right? And one of them I would make super cheap because it's probably going to die on its way in. But I could give the other one the Militia Lances, which are Strength 7, AP 3, Brutal 2, if you can believe that. Or give another unit, like I said, or give 2 units the Melta Lances and have them go tank hunting. So, yeah, I can, to your point, they can be super cheap. Even if you bump them up to a size 10 and give them some weapon upgrades, you're still talking only like 350, 400 points for 3 squads.
Yeah. No, I like them. I like the models. I like the fact that we could see these on the table. This will be one of my favorite units. And then we've got the Beastmasters. What are Beastmasters? Come on, where are we getting this?
Yeah, cool unit. I mean, who doesn't like dogs? And you can run your Mastiff models from Necromunda or from third parties or 3D printing or whatever else. You can even run things like the Cayman, which is another Necromunda model. But I mean, rules wise, they're okay. I mean, none of them are great. They are, I guess, a bit tuned for hand to hand, but none of them are actually going to do a fantastic thing in hand to hand. It's a flavorful choice. It's not one of your best choices. And if you're going to really try and find some hand to hand, I think you're going to get it through the Ogrens or you're going to get it through the cavalry unit as we just discussed.
Yeah. The Caymans, they're pretty tough. They like Ogrens. Weapon skill 4, toughness 5, strength 5, 2 wounds, 5+. It's flavorful. I think is the right word. But it's also giving rights, I'll say, or giving opportunity to Necromunda models that wasn't there before. I don't think was ever there. So
no, not at all. And I mean, again, like for Chaos, if you wanted to do a cult horde, you could have these guys. There used to be Warp Beast models. I think there still are some equivalent models that you can perhaps use. But yeah, I mean, it's a nice little flavorful choice. Maybe we'll go punch or pick on a wounded unit, but they're not going to set the world on fire.
Yeah. And then we've also got the Sentinels. I think these are one of the ones that people will be looking at quite keenly, just because of the points. The multi-laser, 3 wounds, toughness 6. That's a great toughness to have. 3+ save. It's one of the ones with the better saves there. It's and then since it's a mechanized unit, it has all those mechanized rules.
Yeah, this is where you probably want to stick your las cannons or even your multi-multas because they will be more survivor. They will definitely survive a lot longer. It's still only ballista skill 3, but with the right provenance, make that a ballista skill 4. I can definitely see people using these a lot. You know, they scout.
Yep.
So who doesn't like free movement? Yeah, and I mean they're not necessarily too easy to kill. They'll last a little bit with the T6 and the 3 wounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's interesting is the bulky rules. Bulky 5. So it just means it's bulky 5. Doesn't mean it couldn't fit in some cargo some cargo transports.
Yeah, yeah. The way the rules are written as well, they could theoretically be transported, which is that's interesting. All right.
So moving those up with a bit of safety. But yeah, I like the models. I've been myself personally been reading a lot of the Black Library, Astra Militarum books, and they feature prominently in there always as a good thing. And again, I love the models. I think they're the fact that they're in plastic, and we can see their use in 30K.
They can move and shoot. This is definitely of more value than those heavy weapon teams. More survivable, better save. They can move and shoot, so they can hide and then poke out and then shoot something. So yeah, this is where I suggest you put your points in if you really want some heavy weapons.
Yeah, I think we've also got the Thunderbolt Fighter. I'll start myself. Meh is what I'll say there. Just because flyers in this edition are so underpowered, and I don't think it's worth the points.
Agree totally, and it's also still got the third line rule. So not only are flyers not as survivable, this one is even worse. Mm-hmm. And then it's 120 points, and then if you start putting rockets on it, the points go up really quick. It's a hard pass for me.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to, if you have the model, it's nice to be able to use it. I kind of see that, but not something I'd ever go out of my way to buy, convert, or find something plastic there.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're moving into the heavy supports, and I think this is starting to get some juicy parts. Well, we'll start with the less juicy stuff, the Militia Rapier battery here. Again, it's just another emplacement guy.
It is, but this is the one that I actually like more than the weapon teams, as I alluded to earlier. You can get a laser destroyer on it, which is like the ultimate in tank killing technology, and it's not too expensive. I mean, a single team with a laser destroyer is only 55 points. If you wanted to take 5 laser destroyers in a single unit, you could do that. And unlike Marines that only come with 2 gunners, these actually come with 3. So yeah, I mean, I think that this is a really good option if you want to have the heavy weapons, if you want to have the anti-tank weapons. It does have some of the same limitations of the heavy weapons teams, but it is going to be more durable, and it is getting you access to a better weapon. Again, ballistic skill 3, so take the provenance that makes ballistic skill 4, and these are actually very, very useful.
Yeah, and one of the things, maybe I'm missing it in the rules, but as opposed to our Space Marine Rapier batteries, I think these can actually shoot back during the shooting phase.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We'll have to look at that.
But if that's the case, it's a one-up versus what we have for our own laser destroyers when we want to put them in our rapiers. So yeah, I do like it. I do. Again, I think maybe for me, my opinion, the tanks might have some more versatility there, but they're cheap. This is the thing. 55 points for a laser destroyer is not bad at all. And
you can't ignore it.
Yeah, you can't. And the 3 gunners gives it survivability because they get 3, basically, you can take 2 wounds before it even starts to take wounds. Yeah, and, it's nice. So basically, there's a 3 wound give on each of these rapier batteries here.
Yep.
Gives it considerable survivability. Then Malkador heavy tank. Sorry, you had more to say?
No, not at all. I was just going to say the quad launcher on it is interesting because it can only take frag shells and it can't upgrade any of the other ones. So I think if you're going to run these, you're definitely running it with the laser destroyer.
Yeah. The Malkador heavy tank. I'm a bit. I don't actually know what this is. Maybe you can shed some light on that.
Yes, it's a Forge World model, so the Malkador is actually a really cool looking model. It's definitely got that World War One vibe to it. This one is a very interesting choice. It is third line subtype, so that does mean it is a little bit weaker, of course, but it does have reinforced, which helps you ignore things like being shaken. It comes stock with a lot of weapons, right? I mean, it comes with heavy bolter, with a battle cannon, with multiple heavy bolters, and then you can upgrade a lot of this with other weapons. You know, whether you want a Gravis las cannon or you want Vanquisher battle cannons. You know, if you want more of any of this, I think it's a very viable choice in the list, and it's not 2 points crazy as long as you don't go crazy on the weapons. It is armor 13. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a cool model. If I had the model, I would probably put it in the list, but if I don't have the model, I'm not going to probably rush out and buy one. But it's definitely not useless, so I like it.
Yeah, the fact it's Forge World is, I think we're moving away just in general from Forge World into, as they're bringing more and more plastics, we're leaning more towards that. So having to go back for it, even though it's a cool unit, I think you're right in saying that if you own it already, fantastic, play it. Not necessarily something you need to go hunt for from Forge World.
Nope, totally agree.
Now, the core alignment, the Leman Russ. The Leman Russ here is what I think all of the militia will be using as their heavy supports, especially if you're playing Astra Militarum. It's kind of the core of your army as well.
Yeah, I think this is a really, really, really good choice. Now, the limitation, there's two big limitations to it that we have to remember. The first one is it only comes in a unit of one, and you actually can't upgrade it further than that to have more models unless you take the right provenance. And it does still, like all militia vehicles, have the third line, but it is still armor 14. So glances on armor 14 are still kind of hard to do. But definitely this is very useful and it's survivable. I would take it again if you use the provenance where you can or what is it, the Forge World provenance where it allows you to take multiples in a unit.
Yeah. This is it.
Yep.
So
and the ballistic skill upgrade, that's a running theme. Oh yeah, I mean, you could flood the table with that list. You could put 9, 12, 15 of these things on the table at only, like, I don't know, something stupid like less than 1,500 points without upgrades, for 10 of them. Why not? I think you're going to see a lot of these in militia lists.
Yeah, I think this is a cheap way also to get an allied list in through here. Just an easy way to get some tanks in for that. I think it'd be cool. I do like it. I like the model. I don't think you can say much against the Leman Russ model.
No, not at all. And I mean, some of the weapon choices are really, really good. The Vanquisher battle cannon with the coaxial mounted autocannon is probably going to be the one that a lot of people use. It's only 5 points for the upgrade. Executioner plasma cannon, it's a bit pricey, but again, it's a template, so it's not affected as bad by ballistic skill 3 if you don't upgrade the ballistic skill provenance. Yes, definitely a use for this.
We've got let's quite move on. The heavy ordnance battery, just again, all these manned emplacements.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a bigger version of the other choices that we saw. I still think the Rapiers with the laser destroyers are better for killing tanks. This thing is really going to be good at dropping pie plates, but it's squishy.
Yeah,
just like all the heavy weapon teams, it's very squishy. So it's definitely not, to me, something that I would take over the Leman Russ option, unless you were just dying to get multiples of these models on the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Gorgon heavy transporter. This is cool. I like large transports. These because we don't get those in Horus Heresy for the Space Marines unless you go into Lords of War, and I think you only have one. Here, a 40 transport is a heavy support option. That's I like that a lot.
Oh yeah, and front armor 15. Whoa, that's crazy. So you don't really care about third line in that perspective subtype, because you're front armor 15 and side armor 14. It is a bit slow. It only moves 8, but it has a massive amount of transport. So if you wanted to make that little Ogren mini Death Star with the options that we talked about earlier, then this is the guy. It's a little bit hard to find. I can't remember if it's off the Forge World website or not. I know they were still selling it up to a certain point. It does have a lot of weapon options, but most of the weapon options you're probably going to take a hard pass on. I mean, 2 las cannons are going to cost you 20 points, which is more than a Space Marine Legion Predator upgrading their sponsons to 2 las cannons. I don't get that.
Yeah. It's already pricey at 250, especially for the militia. 250 is a significant point sink, but it's getting 8 hull points, armor 15, side 14. It's getting your units there. So it's kind of a guaranteed, but it's not an assault vehicle.
No, it's not.
So yeah, it's getting them there, yes, but getting them there and then having to wait a turn, which is the downside of all non-assault vehicles, especially. So it's kind of sad that it isn't, but it might be too powerful if it was.
Yeah, it's probably a bit overpointed in that regard. Yeah, I mean, again, if you really have your heart set on getting something there safe and you have the model, why not?
And then we've got the one Lord of War choice, the one plastic one that we have access to for a long time, the Baneblade Super Heavy Tank.
Yes, the big Baneblade. It's not as overcosted as in the Legion lists. The big tanks in the Legion list, I think, are criminally overpointed or overcosted. This one is still going to run you, however, about 400 points. It still suffers from third line. It still suffers from ballistic skill 3. If you're going to upgrade with that Prominence, then definitely it's usable. If you're not, I would not spend the 400 points because half of your shots are missing every single time, with the exception of some of the template options. But then those will make it much more pricey. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people have this model, so it's cool that you can definitely put it in the list. But you'll definitely have to also play around with some of the other rules to really make it effective.
Yeah, I like that you can use it. Because it's plastic, and right, a lot of people have it, it's good to add. 400 points is pricey. Armor 14 on the front, again, so it's not super tanky with the third line. 9 hull points, side and rear, 1 down each. But skill 3 is kind of the main thing that hurts it the most. So, well, that's the roundup of the units. I don't think there's any point in us going into the armor itself. Look, if you guys want to look at what the weapons do, it's available on the Warhammer community. I think what we want to try and delve into now is, we talked about the models we could use here, but how, if today you had to start from scratch, and I know you've hoarded a whole bunch of plastic to try and make one of these, but if you wanted to start from scratch the cheapest way possible, how would you get into a militia list right now?
I would go and buy 2 boxes of the boarding party, the new Cadians. That right there is going to give you 2 troop choices. It's going to give you a couple Sentinels. It's going to give you HQ choice. I think it also gives you some heavy weapon teams if you want to go that route.
Yeah, the Combat Patrol for the Estra Militarum, I think that's the one you're talking about. It's 20 Cadians.
Yes. So whatever that starter box is for the Astra Militarum, grab 2, and you've got the core of a militia list very, very easily, that can easily be expanded, by buying things like Leman Russes or buying more of the Ogren models. I mean, this militia list can be as cheap as you want it to be by going that route, or it can be as expensive as you want it to be if you really wanted to get into, some of the Resin Necromunda upgrades and some of the more esoteric models that are available out there for the human range in GW. But I think if you're going to start and you want to do it cheaply, grab a couple of those boxes, and you've already got an allied detachment. Yeah, the core of a militia list.
It's got the militia core line troopers, 2 of the emplacements, a sentinel, enough to make the command squad. You can add to that if you want some levies. You've got the chaos cultists. That's cool for if you're trying to go for the traitor vibe in there. They're a nice thing to have. Definitely usable in this list, and actually weapons appropriate. We've also got, what is it? I think we were talking about the Necromunda gangs. Those are cool, right? Cool ability to use these guys.
Yeah, old farts like me, we remember when there was an Imperial Guard regiment called the Necromundan 8, the Spiders, which was made up by all of the gangsters from the world of Necromunda. you could go lights out on that, right? I mean, and you could get the plastic Necromunda boxes with the gangers, so you don't actually have to spend as much money. But if you wanted to make a Necromundan themed militia list, you could go that route, which would be super cool. And it wouldn't take a lot of conversion work. And then even the basic Cadians, the great thing about it is just something as simple as a head swap, or something as simple as different backpacks can really change the flavor of those models. I mean, you can go more towards the Chaosy, you can go more towards some of the Imperial Guard regiments or Astra Militarum regiments that we see artwork for. You could find things like heads with gas masks, or World War I style heads, or mutated heads, whatever else it is. You got a lot of potential there with the Cadian models to really give your guys some theme or a flavor that you're going for. But really, the sky's the limit with this army, which is what's so exciting about it. You can choose so many different ways that you want to approach this.
Yeah. And then, well, of course, we've got the plastic sentinels. Those are easy to get, the different variants. If you want to go for the las cannon, if you want to go for the multi-laser or the plasma cannons, all available from GW. Very easy to access. Not too expensive. I'm talking about GW prices anyway. It's worth it. Again, the combat patrol gives you one, and you can definitely want to add more. And then we were talking about the fast attack. So the Rough Riders being one of the ways to get these cavalry units as I think the basic way, because they come with a lance. So you can definitely model them with the more powerful Melta Lance version, or just the normal lance. But I think you were talking about that they don't have to be just cavalry, right? So you could convert something along the lines of, I think, was it the Atlan Jackals, the Gene Stealers?
Yes, the guys on the motorcycles. Those could be your cavalry models with just a little bit of work that can easily fit a simple head swap to take away the Gene Stealer looking bit, which is the most prominent one. You might have to figure out something to convert for the lances. But yeah, those would be a great base for a mechanized themed cavalry model. And like I was talking about before, you could get lizardmen steeds. You could get so many different animals that could actually, or vehicles that could serve as the base of your cavalry. Why not go wild? Why not get some of like the Necromunda Ambull models, the big robot looking things, and stick a rider on the back of it? Or those bug looking dudes from Necromunda, the Ashwaste Nomads. Those bugs could be your cavalry. I mean, there's just so many different ways that you could go with this. So don't just limit yourself to the horses or to the existing cavalry models.
Yeah, I think one thing, the recurring theme is the conversion ability of the militia here. No two armies are going to be the same. It's really opening a lot. Even though you don't have to be fully WYSIWYG, everybody tries, but there's a lot of leeway here for catering to not necessarily the WYSIWYG kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you're at a tournament or a competition, and not that there's so many competitions with 30K, but I mean, if you're doing a horde of 50 models and they're all supposed to have las guns, but 10 of them don't, I don't think anybody's going to care as long as they look really cool, because it's totally understandable what you're trying to achieve, and those are probably going to be your first casualties anyways. But so many of the human models can be modified to carry the Cadian guns, or you can, it's taboo. You can 3D print, you can find third party. And I think for some of this, you're probably going to have to really achieve the look that you want. But you can do a lot just in plastic too. The sky's the limit.
Yeah, I think with the prominence of 3D printing now and the modelers that are out there, GW, I'm not going to say they're ever going to lose out, but there's a lot of ability for conversion, not necessarily printing a whole 3D models. Of course, I do know people who do. It's just that customizing this, the sky is the limit.
Yeah, I don't want to. We could have another episode just on 3D printing. I mean, me personally, for my stuff, I tend to avoid it. That's just my own personal thing. You do you. But this is an army that actually you would get some use out of it, because some of the bits that you might want to use, like I'll give you an example. Old Bretonnian men-at-arms had that really cool flat metal helmet that looked like British World War I helmets. Those would look great as part of many of your guys if you wanted to convert them over, but you can't get a hold of those heads. You can't. I mean, either that or you're going to pay astronomical rates on eBay. That would be like perhaps, a route that I would go if I needed to get those kinds of heads and I wanted that kind of look. But yeah, I mean, you can really just do so many things with this, and that's the exciting part about it.
Yeah. Well, there might be some light in the end of the tunnel there for you, because the old world looks like it's something that's likely happening. So we might get the Bretonnians back, and then maybe there is even more conversion in plastic, especially coming our way.
I would have to magnetize all those heads because I'm an old fantasy battle player, and I wouldn't want to sacrifice old world units to get the bits. So yeah, I would have to probably magnetize the bits to use on the two different armies. But yeah, I think that could be exciting. Let's see what models come out for the old world and how they could contribute to the militia armies.
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, I think to round off our discussion here about the militia and the exciting terms, I think to really sum it up, we're excited it's here, we're happy it's here. The conversions are potentially endless. The combinations due to the providences are vast, and I think we'll find interesting thematic, potentially strong as well, combinations appearing in the very near future, maybe on a gaming table near you. I'm hoping to see on a gaming table near me. But yeah, I think I'm very happy it's out. I'm very surprised, pleasantly surprised, and I look forward to seeing what the community as a whole does with access to this.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's been. I mean, we talked for a long time. This easily our longest of the Heresy Thursdays that we have done, and that's because number one, there was just so much excitement in this, which is great, and I think also because I mean the list itself just has a lot to go through. But I'm very excited. I'm even excited to the point that probably this weekend, I wouldn't be surprised if I convert up a squad or two just to kind of get the brain working and see what I want to do.
Yeah. Well, look, from us at Far East Wargaming, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back again next Thursday with another Heresy Thursday podcast. But please look forward to our Monday releases for our videos. We've got an exciting army showcase coming next Monday. And please, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to keep up with the latest from us at Far East Wargaming. From me, Richard, thank you very much. Jason, say goodbye.
Say goodbye. Yeah, thanks everybody. If you listen to this long, we appreciate it, and keep the love and the comments coming on YouTube. We really appreciate that.
So we'll see you next time.
Happy wargaming.